All right, here we go. Welcome to Word and Image Comics, uh, day 2. Um, so I have an exciting class. We are going to be, like I said, we're going to be making an anthology comic from start to finish, and I can't wait to hold it in my hands at the end of the semester. Last session, I talked to everyone about reading chapter 1 of Understanding Comics, as well as I wanted you to bring 2 unique comics to the discussion today. So I want to go around the room and see who our comic creators are going to be this semester, see who's still with us, and also what it is you're going to have to share. Okay. So let's see here. We're going around the room. Looks like I've got Kirk here. Kirk with us. How are you today, Kirk? Are you there?
Great. Yeah, great. How's it going?
Like, there's a microphone here somewhere.
Keeping it on mute. Good. How you guys doing?
Good. So what did you get from chapter 1 of the book of Understanding Comics? You said you read it before, I think you said.
That is right. And I probably lean on the fact that I read it so many times that I have trouble giving as well good of an answer as I might be able to if I read it as thoroughly as I would like to have this week.
So you relied on your previous knowledge of it to guide it.
I guess I would just kind of summarize. It's going over the form. It's talking about the sequential nature and kind of what's the difference. And I hope I'm not skipping ahead, but what's the difference between comic books and animation? Like they're similar. Animation is picture after picture, but the difference is the space that separates them, and the way that they have the reason that they're a different medium is because of what happens in the space between the panels.
All right. I think that's a good answer. And yes, we are going to talk about that today. So that's a little bit ahead, but that's okay. And did you bring some comics? We're not going to look at them just yet, but do you have 2 comics to share?
Yes, I do.
Awesome. Very good. Thank you so much. And thanks for reintroducing yourself again. Next up, we have Kate. How are you, Kate?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing well. And did you read the first chapter of Understanding Comics?
Yeah, I did.
Awesome. And what did you get out of it?
I really liked the historical side of chapter 1. I liked how it went over like the Mayan stories and the Egyptian hieroglyphs and stuff like that. I'm kind of sad it didn't touch on any like um Native American stuff because I feel like that's pretty prevalent, or like Japanese stuff. I know he mentioned it shortly, but I thought that was really cool to like see the historical side of comic books. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's telling stories with pictures. It's been around for a very, very long time. And so that is a really cool part of that story. And did you bring us some comics to share today too?
Yeah, I have downloads on my computer.
Awesome. I can't wait to see those. Cool. Thank you so much. Let's see who else I got here. I see Akila. How's Akila doing today?
Oh, there we go. Good. I'm doing good.
Good. And did you get an opportunity to read chapter 1?
Yeah, I did.
Awesome. And what was your takeaway from it?
I thought it was really interesting to see that comics have such a bad rep, how there's like different kinds of media all over the world that technically is comics but refuses to call itself a comic.
Yep, absolutely. And it's not really something that's part of the curriculum in this class, but there's also a little side history of the U.S. and how the comics almost died in the U.S. And I did one of my senior thesis in college on that. It's pretty interesting as well. And did you bring some comics to share with us today?
Yeah, I did.
Awesome. Can't wait to see them. And how are you going to be showing those today?
I have downloaded and saved on my Google Drive so I can share my screen.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much. And then moving on over here, we got Grace Lindsay. How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. I always love watching people try to find the mute button.
I know. I'm gonna try to say something different. So I think that from the book, I thought it was interesting how he touched on you don't have to be an artist or storyteller to make a comic. Like he was saying, you don't have to be defined as either to do that.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and then I did bring comics. They're on my computer.
Awesome. Cool. I look forward to seeing a lot of cool stuff today. All right, moving down the line. Kristen, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty stoked. I'm excited about this class. Did you get a chance to read the book? The first chapter?
I did.
Sweet. You guys are on a
I
roll.
actually think like one of the things that I actually wrote down was that the art form, like the medium known as comics, is a vessel which can hold any number of ideas and images. So like just the idea that comics are more than just like pictures and for fun, you know?
Absolutely. And something that we're seeing a lot more of these days is people dabbling with all different kinds of storytelling mediums and then putting it together in comic book form. Watercolor, paints, all kinds of stuff. Even, in fact, I have a friend, Daniel Crozier, who has a comic book show, and he hosts a big comic convention called the Comic Horror Fest, I think it's called. And he did a whole comic where I think he took planks of wood and like burned in each panel, like wood burning. So there's just any number of ways that you can tell a story. It's pretty amazing. And you have comics today?
I do.
Sweet, sweet. And how are you going to be sharing those?
It'd be through the camera, unfortunately.
Okay. No problem, no problem. Are you using a webcam on top of your monitor?
I am.
Okay, yeah. So that leaves you pretty much with the hold it up in front of you approach, and that's okay.
I can actually take it off. Like
That might be
movable.
helpful. That might be helpful if you could set your artwork down and then hold the camera. At least what you're looking for is one of the two, if not both, being as still as possible, because if it's moving, it's a little harder to keep track of. But whatever works, we'll make it work. It's not a huge deal either way. I'm so glad you brought some and you read the book. So thank you so much. Moving on over, Bailey, how are you today?
I'm good. I haven't quite read the book yet. It would actually be a reread for me, but from a few years ago. So.
Okay. So you have it, and sort of like Kirk, you were like, I think I remember most of it. And haven't had a chance to
I do
dive
plan
back
on reading it. I was
Good.
gonna do it today. I just haven't gotten to it. I've been at work all weekend. So
Oh, okay. I understand that. And what about the comics?
I do have some. The reason I chose them was because they're kind of originals by artists from an artist alley. So
Awesome. Oh, that's sweet. I love seeing creator-owned stuff. So I look forward to that. And how are you going to share that on your camera or some other
it's
way?
unfortunately got to be on the camera.
Hey, you know what? That's fine. I'm just sort of kind of getting a feel for what our capabilities are. No problem there. Thank you so much, Bailey. Seville, you there? I see your ceiling.
Yes, I am here. I'll be 1 second. I'm so sorry.
I can move on to Max and come back.
I am here. That sounds perfect. Thank
Okay,
you so
okay,
much.
I'll do that. All right, Max, you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Barely. I hear a mumble.
Oh, I'll use chat then.
I think she said use chat then. Oh, okay. So did you read the chapter and did you bring some books to share? Yes and yes. Okay. So I see you're not using the webcam. How are you going to share your books? Scan them in. So you have them on their computer. So can you share your screen? Awesome. All right. That's good enough for now. Thank you so much. And lastly, Seville, I think it's last. not see the whole list.
Probably. I joined a little late, so.
Okay.
So should I go ahead, or are we going to wait for him to share the screen? Okay.
Max,
Gotcha. So I
when
did.
she was in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Great.
Perfect. So I did bring 2 books. I haven't really read too many comic books in my lifetime. So I got this is going to be shown over on this too. But I got a Marvel Comics one that's kind of like, everyone knows that. I thought I should know the basics and see like how the style is. And then my art style is kind of like gory creatures. So I got the manga Angels of Death. And a lot of the things in there seems like gory and kind of like focuses on that because I want to learn better of like anatomy and all that.
Okay, cool. All right, so did I miss anybody? I think, oh yeah, I got Keegan's here as well. Keegan, are you
Hey, yeah.
Are you here today, not at work?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I
Awesome,
got my days
awesome.
all switched off.
Sweet. So did you read the first chapter?
Yeah, it was cool. I didn't know like a ton of old stuff back in the day, like those like tapestry paintings, I guess you would call them, but just like those really long, like I didn't know those were I can't even think of the word.
Sequential art.
Thank you. Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, cool. And did you have some comics for us today?
Yeah, I'll have to share my screen for those since I have them like online.
Perfect. Okay, that's fine. Okay, cool. So looks like everyone has some comics to share. I'm excited to take a look at them. So before we get into checking out those awesome comics, I want to take a moment to discuss what a comic actually is. You got a little taste of that by reading the first chapter, and we're going to go into it a little bit more right now. So let's take a look at that. Share my screen. And I gotta move this where I can see everybody. There we go. All right. All right, so we know what a comic book is. Most of you guys have that in your hand, but what exactly is a comic? I'm going to pick on someone here. Kate, can you tell me just a definition of what is a comic?
A comic is sequential art that forms a story. What did he say? It was like sequential. But it's in panels and it's usually cartoony.
Well, it doesn't have to be
That's
cartoony,
my
but it is a forming of images next to each other. We're going to get into more context about that.
Yeah, sequential.
So here in this example here, this is a little description saying that in its simplest form, comics uses images and recognizable symbols which form a language of their own. And we're going to talk about that language of comics and that combines it with words. So for instance, what we mean by symbols is when you think of emojis, they're sort of the same thing. In the upper left of this design up here, you see this criminal guy with his gun, and we see all the bang bang, and that's just symbolism. It tells us he's firing a gun. We see this character here, and his body language is telling us that he's getting shot. These are just symbols, and so one of the things that Cyanide and Happiness doesn't do is actually use a lot of that symbolism. It's mostly just words and some little placeholder characters. They're not really using a lot of that symbolism. So it's anywhere in between of those two things. I always like this particular comic because it breaks the mold of what we think of as reading boxes in order. Because up here, if you read the words, it says, "And so, lifeless, Gerard Schnabel fluttered earthward. But do not weep for Schnabel. Rather shed a tear for all mankind, for not one person in the entire crowd that watched his body being carted away knew or even suspected that on this day Gerard Schnabel had flown." And so this is all presented, the text and the imagery on the page together. And it's designed to be read in a certain way. So you come up here and you see these two frames. You see a guy getting shot and you see these two guys fighting. Then you come over to the second panel and you see this guy is no longer fighting. He's kind of been knocked out, and this guy's going up and taking out the guy that was shooting the gun. But our poor character, Gerard Schnabel, has fallen out of frame. And as we start reading down the text, we come down and see his lifeless body on the bottom, but then we come back up and see him floating above it, which has all kinds of meanings behind it. But it's just a really interesting way to present words and images that's not exactly linear. And that's something else we're going to be talking about. So, is this a comic? Let's see, Kristen, is this a comic?
I'm gonna say no, just because there's not like a second picture to follow it up.
There you go, you're getting it. So this is often referred to as a comic. In the old days, the funny pages, the comic strips, all that kind of stuff. And a lot of the early comics were single images. If you guys have ever heard of like Family Circus, it was just a one-shot little image. But by the definition that we're hearing in this book from Understanding Comics of what a comic book is, it takes more than one image juxtaposed next to another image in order to classify as a comic. So we end up with sequential art. Okay. One of the things we're going to get into over the coming weeks is the passage of time in between panels. And sometimes that passage of time is mere seconds, and other times it's many minutes, and sometimes it's many hours. So it can change quite a bit. And this is, again, something that's unique to comics, which is pretty cool. All right, so what is sequential art? It is the arrangement of pictures or images and words to narrate a story and dramatize an idea. So let's look at some examples. This one is great. It doesn't have any words at all. Take a moment to let that one soak in. Right? Now, what's interesting about these is that everybody's going to read this at a different speed. Some people are really taking in a lot of the details more than others. Some people are scrolling through it really quickly and kind of just reading the story as it's unfolding. And that's something else we're going to talk about in comics, is how to hold on to your audience longer to build suspense, so they're not just zooming through your story at Mach speed and take something that you took months to make and have them flip through it in less than 30 seconds and like, okay, that was cool. So how do you do that? We're going to talk about that. Here's one example of mine. This is a 2-page spread. We're going to talk more about terms later. But here you can see that it's the same concept, but because there's more detail, you tend to slow down a little bit and want to read those details. So the details here tell us that it's nighttime, there's a fire burning, there's a fight going on. This close-up here shows us that he's angry in his facial expression. And so you can get a lot from this without the words even being laid over this image yet, which they are in the comic. Anybody know what comic this is from?
Moss. Moss.
Moss, or often mouse is another way that people refer to it. It's spelled M-A-U-S, and it's a really fascinating story. It's a graphic novel that is suggested for anybody that is into visual storytelling get their hands on. But it's basically telling the story of the German Holocaust from the point of view of these mice, you know. So it takes on some serious tones, but it also keeps things, you know, a little bit lighter because you're looking at mice instead of, you know, people suffering and whatnot. But it's very powerful, very well written. And as you can see, even though the style is kind of scratchy and not as polished as we think of in traditional American comics or even in manga, it's still pretty detailed and has a lot going on. Anybody know who this is? Somebody besides Kurt. Anybody ever see the movie Sin City?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the creator of Sin City, Frank Miller, and this is actually a shot from that comic. But again, you can see that even without the words on the right, there's still visual storytelling happening, and there's really no detail at all other than pure silhouettes. But we can see that someone has jumped in to something. We can't tell what it is, but based on you know, the writing, we kind of can get more information about that. But we can see that that person is reaching out and grabbing someone. And so all that's told in a really simple and clean way. And that's one of the things that Frank Miller is really known for, is using high contrast to convey images and imagery very, very quickly. And this one we have a little bit more detailed shot, and this is more of an action sequence. And there's a lot of interesting things happening here. We have sound effects. We have a lot of movement. The characters jumping over and back across each other. Notice how in this big panel right here where it says KO, that there's no background. We've just eliminated the background altogether and focused in on just the characters. There's no panel frame. And this character here, his head is breaking the panel border here, and his foot up here, and then down here his foot is overlapping into this panel. So it really creates a sense of, you know, this fight can't be contained within this frame kind of thing. And that's something that's used for characters a lot, like Hulk, where they're just so dynamic that trying to portray them inside a square can seem a little constrictive. So you have them break out sometimes. However, there are rules about it, and we're going to learn those as we go. Okay. Let's see. Trying to figure out what slide I'm on here. Here's another example. I love how this one is, it's kind of affecting the environment and almost breaking the fourth wall, as we call it. So notice how in the first panel, we have this officer leaning in on his desk, and he's putting so much pressure on it that the frame is actually bending, and it gives it an interesting connection from the panel to the character. So there's a lot you can play with in comics. You don't have to keep them, you know, stuck in squares all the time. This is a typical 9-panel format, and as you can see, there's a lot of words going on. This is a page that's specifically designed to slow you down and have you soak in and read all these individual pieces, instead of an action sequence where it happens a lot faster. Usually you'll see this a lot right before a big splash page to sort of slow down the tempo, and then it's kind of like the equivalent of pulling back a rubber band and then on the next page letting it snap, and you have a big splash page. Another totally different style here, very cartoony, kind of black and white, very simple, keeping it in all the boxes kind of approach. Also, we have a lot of comics from different cultures. Hopefully we're going to see some of those today from some of you guys. And here's something interesting. Like I said, I was going to talk about this a little bit, but so manga represents 40% of all the literature in Japan. So if you wanted to, go get, you could easily find like a brochure at the dentist explaining to you how teeth cleaning work in manga form. Everybody there is used to seeing it and reading it. And so it's part of their culture. And there's a reason that their culture embraced it a lot more, and ours had shunned it. And it has to do with World War II. Also, as many of you know, if you've already read some manga, that it's generally read in the reverse order. We read from left to right, and manga is read from right to left. Now, as you guys are learning how to make comics and how to tell a story visually, I'm going to be showing you how panels flow from one to the next and how you control the viewer's eye flow. And if you are used to mostly reading manga, it's going to throw you off, because manga, for one, is flowing a different direction than what you're trying to flow. And so you're constantly going to have to be flipping your mindset. And two, they just kind of make up things and break rules all the time. Like, American comics, diagonal lines, for instance, diagonal panels that are like not perfectly horizontal or vertical, they're more of a diagonal. In American comics, those are reserved usually for dynamic action. Something's unsettling or not, when we think about graphic design principles, when things are flat and orderly, they're stable. When you start to turn and tilt the lines, they're unstable. And so it helps add to the dynamic action of the scene. Whereas in manga, I see all the time, they're just like, hey, let's have a conversation scene and we'll put diagonal angles all over the place. They don't have reasoning sometimes with what they're doing. And so if that's all you're learning from, it can throw you off a little bit. There's some beautiful stuff, though. Also, another thing about manga that a lot of people aren't aware of is that the output rate for manga, because it's 40% of the literature in that culture, it's produced at such a breakneck speed that most people who are American are like, hey, I want to get into making manga, don't generally ever have much hope in actually working in the industry over there, like contending with them. Because in American culture, most comic book artists work at a rate of about a page a day, maybe two, if they're pretty quick. And that's something to this quality, okay? So that gives you about 22 to 24 pages a month, okay? In Japanese comics, it's really common to see studios outputting 500 pages a month. And so that's one of the reasons why most of their comics are in black and white, because they get it out there and they get it out there fast and see how the audience reaction is. And then if it does well, a lot of times they'll go back and have it colored and re-release it in nicer paper. The other thing they also do, if you've collected them, is they tend to print their comics on newsprint, which is a much cheaper paper quality, whereas American comics are usually fancier paper, stuff like that. So that's the big difference, and why when you buy a manga, it's like an inch thick, and when you buy an American comic, it's just like 24 thin pages. Is the amount of speed and time. That's also why you see, if you've ever looked at Barnes & Noble or if you've ever looked online, there are 1,001 how to draw manga books, because manga is quite formulaic. you can pick up how to draw a manga face and a manga style pretty quickly. And they do that for a purpose so that they can crank out 500 pages a month. You'll find that the more stylized stuff, though, is the stuff that stands out. Then you have, comics of similar look, but from different cultures like Korea, stuff like that. Then we have French comics. French comics and French art is known for being very meticulously detailed. Mobius is a really well-known artist from there. Anyone have any idea what this comic is? Okay, so this comic, interestingly enough, was the inspiration, part of the inspiration for so many things that you know. It was started in the 60s, this comic, and recently became a movie that you might have heard of called Valerian. It didn't do very well here in the United States, but it is the inspiration for Blade Runner, for The Fifth Element, for Star Wars, for so many things, because it was out before all of them. And it has a lot of these really interesting elements. And by the time they finally made a movie, everyone was like, yeah, I'd seen that before. And they didn't realize that that's where it all came from, which is kind of sad when you think about it. This is Mobius. Everybody really knows his style is very thin lines. We're going to talk about line weight and stuff, but lots and lots of detail, lots of cool little things to look at. A lot of people just absolutely love it, and I do love some of his pieces, but for the most part, I feel like it looks like a Where's Waldo image, where there's all this detail, but there's never any shadowing or texture work, very little texture work anyway. And it's heavily reliant on the coloring to come in and finish it up. If you look at it by itself, it can be hard to look at. It's kind of like, looking at a bunch of typed words on a piece of paper. It doesn't stand out to you. Nothing in particular stands out to you. I'll point out more what I mean by that later. However, that being said, whether I like it or not, Mobius is probably one of the most recognizable names in the art community. And as you can see, this image here, very reminiscent of Fifth Element, if you guys have seen that before. If you haven't, shame on you. Here's another one. The thing that Mobius did know how to do really well, similarly to M.C. Escher, was to really play with perspective a lot. He knew his perspective. So you can see here this kind of fishbowl looking perspective he's got going on. But down below, you can also see another reason why he's so popular. He did the concept art for Aliens, Tron, The Abyss, Star Wars, and The Fifth Element. So very well-known dude. Here we got some comics from the Netherlands. Okay, so someone already answered this earlier, but I'm going to ask someone else. Bailey, is animation sequential art?
I mean, yes, it is.
Full stop. She's like, yes, it is. Okay.
Well, I mean, it is. I actually do animation myself and you have to draw everything.
You're right. You absolutely do.
So.
And I have a degree in animation and I love animating as well. But the answer is no. And why, though? Do you have any idea why, as an animator, that animation? Now, you could answer this, what is animation but a series of images, right? So what makes an animation not sequential art, not a comic?
I'm going to guess that it's moving.
Well, it's not just that it's moving, because we do have some, I don't know. I think motion comics are kind of blurring the line of being more animation. But the main reason that it's not a comic and it's not technically sequential art is because of you. All right. And what do I mean by that? When you watch an animation or a movie, if you guys know anything about filmmaking, movies are just another series of still images pieced together, but they're presented at us at such a high rate of speed that there is no pause time between any of those frames. You don't actually see that broken blank gutter area between this panel and this panel. It's just being presented to you as one constantly moving image. And that's where the change happens, because in comics, when I see one image and then I see the next image, it's up to my brain to determine, based on the information given to me, how much time has passed, how quickly I want to read the next panel and observe all the details in it. But when you watch something like a film or an animation, it's given to you at the speed that they choose, and you're just absorbing it. You're just taking it in, and you're now an observer rather than an active participant. And that's what makes comics unique more than any other medium, is that when you listen to music, you're just, observing is not the right word, but you know what I mean. You're just kind of soaking it in. You're not participating in it. When you're watching film and animation, same thing. But when you're reading a comic, you are a participant in it, much more like reading a book, and you have to engage with it. So the difference is that we're trying to tell these stories with these images, so that in a book, for instance, I'm sure all of you have experienced watching a movie that was a book first, and you read the book, and then you're like, that's not how I expected that person to look at all. That's not how I saw them in my mind. And that's because there's no visual context in a book. It's all up to you. So a comic is a middle ground, and it says, well, here's what we think the character looks like, but you can start to piece together some of this other stuff. What does he mean by that look that he's giving? Is he angry? Is he frustrated? You get to kind of put some of that in yourself. So that's what the main difference is, okay? Hopefully that was a little bit enlightening and helpful and not just completely boring. I try not to make it boring. I got music and stuff, man. All right, so the next thing I want you to do, let me actually just show you where it's at, and then you can find it easily. All right, I've got it up here, so let me share my screen. If you can get yourself to the D2L, that'll be helpful. If not, you're just going to play the guessing game, okay? So under comic terms, which is right under the first day of class, we're going to go to this first one right here, and this has all the different types of comic book formats, okay? So make sure that you can have that up where you can see it, because I'm going to stop sharing my screen and start holding up some comics, and hopefully, you guys can determine what they are. This is a little bit easier in class when you can actually feel it and see it, but I think we'll make it work. Okay, so if you can find that. If not, if you can't do that for whatever reason, then you just have to guess, okay? All right, so let me make this a little bit bigger so I can see everyone. All right, so I'm going to kind of do this randomly, and let's see, let me just go with a very simple one. All right, so let me get the glare off of here. There we go. Okay, so this, as you can see, it's in a bag and board. I don't know why I'm getting so much reflection here. You can see it's thin. So what would we call this? So I'm going to go with Kate. Kate's got her mouth full.
A graphic novel?
Nope. Wrong answer.
Hardcover?
Nope. Moving on. Now the reason that it's shiny is not because of the comic. It's because I have it in a board and bag. So it's just a protective sleeve. It's not the comic itself. Okay. But the thinness of it should also tell you that it's not a graphic novel or anything like that. So I'm going to go to the next person. Kristen, what do you think it is?
Is it a digest?
Nope. Kirk, what am I looking at here?
I was going to say digest too.
Okay, we're going to learn some terms today.
Single
then.
issue.
It's not. There you go. Say it
Sorry.
again.
Single issue, and I think we missed that just because the text is a little bit separated for a certain center part, like where it says graphic novel, trade paperback, and single issue is kind of small up at the top. And sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Well, I'm not going in order.
Okay.
I said that. So I'm just throwing them all out here. And yeah, I see what you're saying. Some of them are highlighted, but you're right. Like there's a whole bunch of these on the list. Okay, we're not going to get to all of them. So I just wanted to see if how hard it was to try and guess these over the camera here. But yes, the answer is this is a single issue. Okay, so when we make a comic for our class, this is our sample of our class comic. This is a single issue. It's thin, it's staple bound, and it's another term we often refer to it as a floppy because it is flexible, which is why we put them in these rigid boards and bags to keep them protected, particularly for the collectors. Okay, now. Those single issues come in a wide variety of versions. Okay, and we're going to talk about that real quick. Okay, so this is Batman White Knight #1. You can see the number up there, and so here's gonna give you another example. Now pay close attention. This is Danger Girl #1. I know there's a little bit of a glare on it because I got it in the bag because it's a little bit more rare. I don't want to take it out. But hey, that name looks familiar. Now, you see that this is issue 1. Now, it might be hard to see, okay? Especially when I do that, okay? Now, when I flip this over, totally different cover, but we still have Danger Girl #1, okay? So, Bailey, can you tell me what you think that might be?
A variant cover.
A variant cover, absolutely. Good job. Good job. So, this is something that's really common still to this day. It's kind of resurfacing lately, especially with the independent comic market. As I told you guys, have a comic I'm launching in February. I've got 4 different covers that's coming in, including one of them is a holographic cover, which is really cool. But it's a really popular way to get collectors to buy the book, because if you have one that's the standard version that everyone will see in the store, and then you have a guest artist who does one of these and they only make like 1,000 of these or 500 of these, now they're already really rare. In the 90s they kind of went crazy with that, and they had books that would have like 20 different variant covers. And it was a little ridiculous. So don't do that. All right, now, this one takes a little bit of thought. It's a little bit more of a challenge. It's still a individual floppy comic, but what do we see on this cover? Who are the characters that you see?
Deadpool and Punisher.
Okay, so Deadpool has his own comic. Punisher has his own comic. So what is this?
It's a crossover, right?
Absolutely right. Keegan wins. Good job. So this is another thing that's really common to do in comics to get your audience to cross-pollinate. If you've got people who are following the Punisher and you want to get them interested in Deadpool, you connect those two characters together. We see this in the Marvel Cinematic Universe quite a bit now. It's a trick that they've been using for decades in comics, and then they started doing it in film. It wasn't really surprising to see them start doing it in film. Now, what you won't see very often is characters who cross over from different companies. So it's not likely you're going to see Superman and Spider-Man in the same story. However, that did happen in the 80s. There was a huge, weird crossover event at both companies. Now, what you will see more in the independent market is that independent markets tend to be a little looser with, you know, their product, because everybody owns it and they're like, I can do what I want. So if someone's making a really awesome comic and it kind of ties in with my comic, we might talk and say, hey, is there something that we could do to kind of put these two characters in the same situation, same universe? Maybe, you know, they walk through a time portal now and, you know, it puts them together. Because it's a great way, again, to take all of that person's audience and tie it together with my audience and get more following. So it's definitely something to consider. All right, this is a big one. It's heavy. Ugh. All right, take a look at how thick this is. This is half the width of my fingers, and I got really long, crazy long fingers, right? So this is like, how many issues is it? I forgot. This collects 47 individual issues into one book. Okay. So anybody know what that's called?
A compendium.
A compendium, yeah. In fact, this one's sort of a cheat because it says it right on the cover, right? I was trying not to flash that around too much. There aren't very many people that have done it. Surprisingly, this book is written by Robert Kirkman, who wrote The Walking Dead, and there are many compendiums of The Walking Dead as well. He's one of the few creators who have had multiple books get into that compendium level because he writes such long, long stories. Now, here's the thing I want to talk about, the difference between, that's a little bit tricky, okay? Now, you guys all know this character. I'm going to turn this over. You can see that this has a spine. It's glue bound. It's not staple bound, okay? So we know it's not a single issue. So what is this?
A graphic novel.
Okay. Now, whoever said that, who said that? Can't see it.
Keela.
Okay. I don't know why that didn't usually, I thought I had it set to whoever speaks pops up. So if you're talking to people, or if you're referring to your own comic or whatever, the most common term for this is graphic novel. If you go into Barnes and Noble and you're looking into the comic section, this is going to be called the graphic novel section, right? They actually don't sell floppy comics at Barnes and Noble. They only sell graphic novels. Now, here's the thing. There is a distinguishable difference between a graphic novel and what the first bolded thing there is called a trade paperback. And most of the things we actually see are really a trade paperback. And the difference is that a trade paperback simply collects a bunch of individual issues that were released individually. And then like every 3, 4, 5, 6 issues, they put them all together and they release it as a book. And so this one collects Batman 1 through 7, okay? So its technical term is a trade paperback, and all it is collecting a bunch of single issues. A true graphic novel is designed from beginning to end to be one book. It was never released as individual issues, right? And so you're just wanting to tell a story, and you're gonna like see it through to the end before you publish it, and it's all going to come out as one complete story rather than these individual little pieces. So that's what a graphic novel truly is. But like I said, everywhere you go, if they say graphic novel, they're probably talking about either one. Okay, so that one's a tricky one.
So like Mouse would be a graphic novel then, right?
Yes, I don't think Mouse ever came out as individuals, so yes. Okay, so here's one that was mentioned earlier. I want to point it out. Notice the size difference. This is our normal size Batman comic, trying to get this in the right place. And notice how much smaller this is. Sorry about that. I'll get it right. There we go. Got to be in front of it. Okay, so quite a bit smaller. Okay. So what? Anybody know what this is?
Is it a mini comic?
It's not quite a mini comic. This is called a digest. Okay, so it's still glue bound. It still, has everything in it, but it's just a smaller version of it. And for those of you that, and it's also usually in newsprint form. And for those of you that are collectors of manga, a lot of it comes in this format. It's smaller, contains a lot of information, and it's printed at a smaller size so that you can have more of them on your shelves. So it's just a smaller version. But a mini comic is a comic that's smaller than the average comic book size, but still that floppy, staple bound type of thing. So thought I had an example of that around here. But so it might be the same size as this, but it's still staple bound and folded like an actual comic. It's just a little bit mini version of it. So yeah, those are some of the big ones. And then scrolling down here, I'll go through a couple I don't have examples for. We talked about crossover. Events. Events are something that Marvel's known for as well. If any of you follow Marvel, and basically it's like, if you know Marvel at all, you know that they've got not a million, but hundreds of different titles. They've got Spider-Man and Punisher and Daredevil and all these different things. An event is something that's written by the producers and editors that affects all the comics. And so every comic you pick up is being affected by this event that happened. So, Doomsday event or the Crisis on Infinite Earths or things like that, where everybody gets affected. The Avengers movie is similar to that in that as they go into Spider-Man movies after the Avengers, Spider-Man's been affected by it. It carries over. And so even if no other characters are in the movie, they still talk about it as if this big event happened, the big finger snap or whatever. So that would be considered like a big event, and that happens in mostly the big two comics, which brings me to my next little thing down here at the bottom. You can see the big two. We talk about the big two, and that is Marvel and DC. Now, surprisingly, that phrase is probably going to start to fizzle away, because although Marvel and DC will probably remain the most popular characters, they are really pulling back on their production of actual comics and pushing their other formats, movies, TV shows, all that kind of stuff. So is Marvel and DC both. So companies like Image Comics, who produce individuals, Dark Horse, Boom Studios, companies like that are really starting to rise up, as well as independent comics. There has never been a better time to be an independent comic book artist, because everything that's available to us to get our book out to the masses is just as easily as the big players is there for us now because of the internet. And now we have printers that can do print runs at small runs that are affordable, because that was the big challenge when first coming into the comic book scene is, hey, you can make a comic, but to distribute it around the globe, you need to print a minimum of several thousand copies. And you had to pay for that out of your own pocket. And nowadays you can make runs as few as 25 individual issues. So the world has changed, and it makes it a lot easier for people to just start making their own thing. Okay. So let me minimize that window so I can see some other stuff. Anybody have any questions about those formats? No? Okay. Pretty straightforward. If you want to refer back to those because you'll hear me use those terms. One of the things I want to work on this class is using the right terms. We're going to get into next class the actual terms of the individual comic, things like a gutter and speech bubbles and stuff. Some of you already have looked at that, and that's okay. But we're going to do a little in-class type of game next class and see who can get these down the fastest. Okay. So now that we've said what they are, I want to go around the room and take a look at your comic. I want you guys to try and keep it to just, like 1 or 2 minutes per book for what it is that you're sharing, like who it is, and kind of the background of like what the comic is. So, hey, this is Pirates versus Ninja. It's put out by Antarctic Press, and the reason I'm sharing it and like it and think it's unique and different is because, and that's about it. Because we have a lot of people and we want to see as many comics as we can. And then after we get through that, we will take a look at your artwork. Okay. So let's see here. So can everybody do that? Keep it to a couple minutes. I'm talking to you, Kirk. I know you're going to want to tell me all about it. So we're going to go first with you. Kirk, how are you going to share your comics with us today?
I guess I would put them on the screen with the screen share, and I have to fidget around. I have 3 computer screens, so I just need to make sure that it's on the correct one.
Yep.
I actually don't have a lot of narration to add to it, but I got the 2 comic books, and happy to scroll through them.
Okay, go for it.
Giving it a try.
This will be good practice for you guys.
Okay, I think I got the right one. And then I'm moving the PDF viewer over. Can everybody see it?
I see your Pinterest page.
What about now?
Now I see it, yeah.
And this is a book called Ad Astra in Africa. It's one of my favorite artists and illustrators, Barry Windsor-Smith. Basically, everything I like is usually in black and white with kind of like an illustrative style. I like the horror style and like the illustrated. Basically, anybody who's worked on Conan. So I don't know. I really like what he does.
Okay.
These are really cool compositions, and he's kind of taking Frank Miller-esque style of design and illustration in the same book. Am I going too fast through the pages?
A little. I mean, there's a lot of detail there, but the thing about it is that like you have to in some of these pages there's so much detail that it's like where am I supposed to look? This page is really clear. It's like, hey, this figure in the middle is obviously the focal point, and there's a big power surge and kind of explosion, but like going back, there was a couple of pages where in this one here, for instance, you really have to look hard to, kind of really linger on these pages to see all the stuff that's going on, because it's more line based, and there's not really a lot of places that are just like completely black or completely white. The areas that are completely white, like this character's body, immediately jump out to us because there's a difference there. But the detail, Barry Windsor-Smith's detail is really like top notch and second to none. So a great example. Did you have another one?
Yeah, the next one's going to be Bernie Wrightson, some of his creepy stuff. And I think I would just say, I mean, you're totally right about the line work. There's not a lot of like contouring, etc. And I guess I just like it. It's kind of what my art ends up being like too. So.
Well, you'll see with Bernie's stuff that Bernie's stuff has a lot more contrast. You can easily see all the individual parts very quickly. So this is just an average like conversation page. But notice how even down around like the legs of the male character that's standing there, we can, still see a difference between the background and his legs because he's using these heavy blacks to make it pop. And there's some other examples of his that are even more strong with that. I haven't actually seen a lot of his comic pages. This is cool. It's almost like animation. You're going so fast.
Yeah, I kind of skipped through the book. I don't know. I'm just trying not to take up too much time. But
Sure,
yeah,
sure.
that's
Well,
my
I didn't-
favorite
yeah.
page with the.
Yeah, no, I agree. So go forward a little bit till you get to the color. There was a page I saw that I really wanted to linger on for a second. One more. Stop there. So this is, I've seen some of this work here, and I have some of his bigger, like single panel pages from Frankenstein, and I'll be showing those later, and when we get into line work. But he's really great at creating textures. But notice how when you look at this panel here, granted it does have color on it, but I could almost guarantee that the black and white one would still have just as much pop. But a large part of that is because he's taken the character and the two main characters, and he's wrapped them with a lot of dark and contrast. So it makes your eye go right to it. And then the other things that are in the background, all of the beakers and things like that, there's just enough detail there for you to tell what they are, but he hasn't gone like full bore detail with them because they're receding into the background, and it needs to feel like that. So he's really like an amazing illustrator when it comes to line art. So those are great examples. Thanks for sharing those.
Thanks very much. Yeah, the contour I've always struggled with. I have not found the key to getting better at it, but those are the two books I have. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, hopefully we'll work on that a little bit throughout the class. I look forward to it. All right, so make sure you stop sharing at the top.
There we go. I'm not too used to this sharing. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. No problem. All right, so we'll go on to the next person on the screen. I see Bailey. You ready?
So the reason I picked these is because they're originals from artists in an artist alley at a couple different conventions, and so this is the best way I can show it to you.
Nice, Tess and Jack. Okay, let me set one thing. Let me set you to spotlight that for everybody so that my voice doesn't switch it back. All right, cool. And was that something here you got in Colorado?
It is. I got it at Colorado Anime Fest, and I kind of like it because it kind of has a bee and puppy cat look to it.
Mm-hmm.
And
doesn't look like there was a lot of words on that page.
If I could find it again. But, yeah. She does use a lot of words. She's actually an animator as well.
Okay. Yeah.
But I love going to conventions and finding people who have like their own stuff because I always find it interesting. This one's more in the single issue kind of format, more American, where this one is also a comic from a convention artist, and it's more of in the manga style.
Oh, that's pretty.
Yeah. But it's printed as an American comic, so like manga art style, and like it's black and white, but it has the thicker paper to it.
And it goes from left to right.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. So it's got more detail. Yeah, sorry, you guys can't really see it.
That's all right. I can see it enough.
But I like
cool. I really like that cover work too. It's very pretty.
Yeah. I like the fact that she has like a little bit of foil right here on the cover too. So.
Yeah, that's spot foiling or spot UV. That's something that's used to be a lot harder to do, and now it's becoming easier and easier. So when did you get that? I know it wasn't last year.
It was not last year. It was maybe 3-4 years ago.
Right on. And did you say it was at Denver?
Yeah, they both were.
Nice. It's a big Denver Comic-Con.
Yeah.
We were probably there at the same
They were
time.
actually both anime conventions. One was NDK and the other one was Colorado Anime Fest.
Oh, okay. Okay. That makes more sense. Yeah, those are both still also really big events. So very cool as well. If you guys are fans of anime and haven't seen those, be sure you check those events out when they get back rolling, which may not be for a bit. So that is a really great share. Thank you so much. All right, so let's move to Grace.
Okay, I have a couple that I downloaded.
Sweet.
This is so weird because, so can you see this?
I can now, yeah.
This is the Devil May Cry comic.
Okay.
And I chose it because it's the second game that I played on PS2.
Mm-hmm.
And it's by Mick Lee, and I really like the art style as well. And I believe Dark Horse Comics makes this as well.
Okay. Yeah, it's very very painterly. I like it.
And then this is a web comic that I follow on Imager by Nico Ama. It's like about the Pokemon, and I really like her art style.
So this is a person who doesn't work for Pokemon making a web comic about Pokemon.
Yeah.
But
she doesn't get any money for it. It's all on Imager. It's a free website like Reddit.
Sure. Yeah, and that's totally something you can do as long as you're not selling it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the equivalent, same thing of like, people write fan fiction, little short stories all the time. So it's totally cool for everyone. Keegan says, I've seen those. She does a monthly or bi-weekly comic with Pokemon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. That's actually quite a bit of nice detail coloring. I see there's a little bit of shading and texture here and there, but mostly just like a flat color. But she's chosen a lot of subtle changes in the colors to give it a nice look.
Yeah,
like
I
here
know.
It looks like it's nighttime, kind of dusk, which is kind of cool, without using a lot of fancy effects.
And then I have a manga. It's just black and white, and this
Mhm.
is Fruits Basket, which is a really sad, depressing story.
Okay. So here is a great example, guys. I wanted to take a second to look at this. I'm not in control of this, so I'm just going to try to voice over here. But obviously, this is a comic that's read right to left. Because if it was a left to right comic, there's a big no-no right from the beginning. And that would be, you see how when we look at the top panel, the character on the right is facing to the left, and our eye is being brought to that top left panel. Okay, so that's a way, if you're reading it from right to left, that makes sense, right? And then you would come down because you can see is overlapping those two panels, which is another indicator that lets us know that the flow of this page. Okay, we're going to talk about using word bubbles to help the flow. But if this was an American comic, this layout where you've got two panels on the left and one panel on a bigger panel on the right rarely ever works. In fact, I'm going to try and make you ingrain it in your brain to not ever do it. And the reason for that, we're going to get into more later. We're going to have a whole day dedicated to it. But if you were to start on the upper left panel, in a world where we read left to right, top to bottom, you wouldn't know whether to go down or to the right next because of the placement. It would be confusing, but because it's reading right to left, it's clear. And so that's one of those things where if you were to just say, okay, I like this page, I'm going to start drawing it, but you were drawing it the exact same panels, but you were drawing it left to right, it would not work. It would come out very, very wrong. So that's one of those things where we got to really dissect what we're looking at when we look at some of these comics. So that's a great example. I'm glad you showed it.
I
All
have
right.
one more.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if I was going to show it because I didn't want to look like a suck up, but I have your comic and I'm really enjoying it so far. Especially the art that you put into it. Oh my goodness. It's so good. I'm not being a suck up. I'm just saying this is the only physical copy of a comic that I have.
Oh, really? Okay. And you said you got that from Amazon, right?
Yeah, I got the I believe it's like 4 of the books.
That's 6 of them. That's 6
Oh,
issues.
6 of them. Okay.
Yeah, and that's white. That's a white one, so it also has extra content in the back. It's the deluxe edition.
Yeah, I was looking at that too. When I first got it, I looked at the back first.
Well, that's something we'll talk about later too, is, you know, as I said, I'm gonna try and share as much of my experience in making comics with you guys as I can. And that comic that she's holding there, technically is a trade paperback. It's a collection of the first 6 issues. I released those issues individually first. And so the individuals are out there, but they're hard to find because I only ran several hundred copies of each at a time. But when I finally launched the graphic novel form, which is what I was shooting for, we had a normal version, which is just the standard edition. And then we had a deluxe edition that had the extra content that is in the back, which is like the concept sketches, the idea sketches, stuff like that. And then there's even some fan art back there, submitted from people who are fans of the book. And then we have a deluxe hardback edition. So when we launched it, people had a choice of books to make, and it was just, it's very similar to having a variant cover. It was a way to have multiple ways for people to enjoy the book. And so I'm going to encourage you guys, if you ever make your own books, to find ways to supply that for your fans and your customers. So thanks for sharing that. I appreciate you sharing my book. I wasn't expecting that. Keegan says you're not a suck up. His stuff is really good.
I know, like you put so much detail. I can't believe it. Like when I'm looking at it, it looks like almost like a digital picture because the colors glow. Like I don't know how to, it's really good. That I'm giving you a compliment.
Well, that's something it's interesting to me because as you guys will experience if you make your own book, it takes time to make books, especially when you got another job you have to do or whatever. So from the time that I made the very first pages of the comic to the time that that book was released as a graphic novel, a lot of time had passed. And I really have a hard time looking at some of those first pages because I'm like, oh, I draw so much better than that now. It's hard to look at. Another thing I'll share about that book that you may or may not be able to tell, as you do more artwork, it'll be easier to see for you if you can't tell. But the entire 6-issue book that you have is penciled and then colored directly over the pencils. I skipped the inking stage altogether, not because I wanted to, but because I needed to be efficient. We're going to talk about all the different stages of that later and like how people work. But my process has changed now in this next book because I originally wanted to have it inked. I wanted to have that dark, Spawn, Batman kind of feel because it's a book about hunting demons. So you wanted to get that dark feel. But I really couldn't afford at the time to hire another inker to go back over my work. And I didn't have the time to go back over my pencils and ink it again. So instead, my approach was to pencil everything really tightly. So you can't see any eraser marks. It looks very, very clean and tight. And so when I adjust the levels on it in Photoshop, it kind of looks inked. And then I colored over the top of it. So you'll be able to spot the difference when I show you my new pages, which are all inked now. But yeah, it's just another approach that can be done. But as we were talking about at the beginning of this session, how you make the art is completely up to you. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Grace. It was exciting to see you share my book too. So I appreciate that. I'm going to jump over to Keegan now. So we got to stop sharing, I think, too, if you didn't. Oh, you did. Oops. There we go.
That works. Okay. So this was a comic that I used to read as a kid. It's called Get Fuzzy. I think it's made by some dude in Canada.
I
I'm
remember
pretty
that comic. I
sure.
love that comic.
Yeah, I used to read a lot. I used to have like a bunch of books back in the day. But I liked his art style. It was just weirdly appealing to me as a kid. And so I was like, yeah, these are cool. If it would ever load.
Yep, there we go. So again, close that ad real quick. So again, remember when we were looking at Kirk's examples of some of those artists using line weight to depict the differences between one thing and another. So in this first panel, you see the couch has got a line pattern to it, which gives it like, say, a mid-tone of like 50% gray. And then, where'd you go? You moved it. So then when you look at the dog being all in white on that couch, it really pops off. But then the character in the vest, his vest is really dark. And so it creates a way to get nice contrast. And then you got those beautiful wood patterns. Really nice stuff. I always like that guy's stuff too.
He's pretty cool. So the other one was Dorohedoro, actually. I did want to show One Piece, but this lady has a way cooler art style. Like it's a lot messier. It's just more fun, honestly.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have seen this or not, but it's on Netflix. It's pretty weird as far as stuff goes. Like,
so what is it that's on Netflix? Is it a movie or a show called Doro?
Yeah, it's called Dorohedoro. It's weird. It's just about like two people. One of them has a alligator head and wears a mask. It is honestly very strange. It's about like sorcerers and all kinds of random stuff, but it is kind of gory.
Is the thing on Netflix live action or animation?
Yeah, it's live. It's or no, it's not live action. It's an animation. Sorry.
It's an animation. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah. Again, this is another great example because it's something that's different. But the thing again to keep in mind when you're looking at all these is that scratchy style can work really well, but you have to have an understanding of contrast, so that people's eye knows where to go. So here, like even with this entryway, you've got all this detail, all these curtains and chains and everything. But then when we get down to the people, it's clear to see what's going on because there's a nice contrast. So you gotta know and pick and choose where to have your high contrast places. But yeah, I like it. I like the style. It's different.
Yeah, it definitely is. And then the other, God, that thing is just in the way. Just One Piece. It's like number one in Japan right now. It's a lot like cleaner than that one is. This is more like on the traditional side for sure, kind of like Dragon Ball Z and all that.
Yep.
It's still right to left, and that I hate the way manga's layout is. Honestly, or manga, whatever, it is just like kind of sucks from time to time. Like the way they do it, I'm like, I don't know where the hell I'm going, or like read wrong stuff first. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
that's great, and I've been looking at this stuff for a while, so that's.
Well, yeah, and again, there's some stuff that has to do with the translation of the comic into English. There's other things that have to do with like all those symbols. If you don't speak the language, you're like, I don't know what that means, but it's an important part of the storytelling. So it makes it challenging for sure. But it is really cool story and really fun artwork.
Yeah, it's It's been nice. It's hit 1,000 episodes just before the end of the year, 2020.
Yeah.
Which was nuts.
So that's a great example. I love that almost all of those were in black and white, so that's cool as well. So good job on that. I'll remove that. So good job. All right, so let's see. Moving on over to Akila. Can you share with us, Akila? Oh, and thank you for sharing that, Keegan. If I didn't say that already.
Yep. Let's see. Share. Okay. We'll do the first one.
Everybody see that?
So this is a Uzumaki, which is one of my favorite like original got into manga, and so it
That's
is
some
right
trippy
to left.
stuff.
Yeah, I really like it's a horror manga,
Mm-hmm.
and so a lot of dark colors, a lot of more like they use a lot of swirls to show off a lot of the horror.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that one, it is kind of freaky.
I've seen this panel before somewhere.
I just kind of picked like a couple of my favorite, but see, it has like a lot of like the swirled lines to show off like the horror stuff.
Yep.
And so this is one of my old favorites. If we go back.
Cool.
And then this is fan manga. So, but it is left to right. I just really, really love their art style that they have. It's a lot of clean lines, like the panels don't often intersect.
Right.
And so this is characters from an anime that they took.
Yeah, it looks like it's the characters drawing style is Japanese, but the panel layout style is much more American.
Yeah, it's a nice mix of the two.
Yeah.
They have, I will skip down to way later. They show stress and like inner thoughts by using like this scribbled out black.
That's cool.
So they do that a lot in theirs.
Nice. A lot of texture going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of snapping out of his mental state.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah, so those are my two favorites.
Cool. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. I like it. Again, some more black and white. I love that because we are going to be working in black and white. And the more that you look at black and white comics and learn like how they're getting you to look at the things they want you to look at instead of just getting lost in it, the more you'll pick up. I can guarantee you that by the time we finish this class, you guys will all look at comic book pages differently. One of the things I always like to say is like, I went to school for animation and film, and we learned about how things are made and how special effects are done and what it takes to make all these shots. And it really changes your experience when you go to the theater and watch a movie. You're like, what's happening with the camera, how they did a thing, and it pulls you out sometimes because especially when you see somebody do it wrong and you're just like paying more attention to that than you are the movie. It's challenging. And you'll have the same experience as you learn more about comics. You'll start to look at comics differently and you'll catch stuff in a professional made comic that's just not right. And you're like, why did they do that? That they shouldn't have done that. And the answer is that, all this stuff is done at a high production level. So when you're cranking stuff out that fast, mistakes are going to get made. So thank you for sharing that. That was a great example. Let's go over to Kristen.
All right, I'm gonna see if this works.
Let me spotlight you. There we go. Oh, I know that book. I got that one sitting in my lap right now.
Yeah, I saw you put it up and I was like, well, I have probably not as good of a condition of the same thing. But
That's
this
awesome.
is Watchmen. A lot of glare going on.
Well, we can still see it. You're fine. I do see the glare, but that's okay. So tell me why you chose that particular book.
So I chose this one because it's very clean. Like you can see that like none of the panels really like intersect. They're all very straight.
Yep.
There's not like anything, nothing really overlaps.
Right. That was a very intentional
Because
choice too.
yeah, and it's like very stark difference between like my other one, which is a Mass Effect comic from Dark Horse Comics,
Uh-huh.
and like every single panel in here, it's all overlapped. It's
Yeah.
all
That's a
action.
very common American comic thing to do right now. And it, to be personally honest, I feel like a lot of the artists that do it are overdoing it and don't really think about what they're doing. It just looks cool. And
Yeah.
so sometimes it can look amazing, but then you're like, wait, I don't know what order to read this page in. Whereas
I
you
think
never have that problem in a Watchmen comic.
yeah, like this panel in particular, it kind of takes a little bit to figure out like where to go.
Right, right. And we're going to talk about why that is a problem and how to avoid it. But you're right, The Watchmen is a very easy to read comic. Dave Gibbons did the art for that, and he also did the lettering, which is unusual. Most artists don't do their own lettering. But the entire book is in a 9x9 format. You'll see 3 rows and 3 columns, and then occasionally they'll take 2 of those squares and merge them together, like in the upper left-hand corner of that left page. And part of that is just because they wanted to have this slow pace comic where there's just lots of visual information from one thing to the next. And it's being told very visually. A lot of people look at it and go, oh, that looks kind of boring. But, if you read it, you find it's a pretty amazing story. So I'm glad you chose that one. It's one of my favorites. So those are it though, right? Those are your 2?
Yeah, I mean, I
Awesome.
could pull out Calvin and Hobbes if you want, but
Well, I actually am going to be using Calvin and Hobbes as an example too. So you're on the same page. So good job. But no, we don't need to see the Calvin and Hobbes now. The 2 that you had were great. Good examples. Thank you for sharing. Let's see. Who have I not covered? I see Brina, Max, Seville. Kate, did I do you already?
No, not yet.
Not yet? Okay, let's start there. And then we'll move over to the right.
So let me get the share screen going. Okay. Ooh. Okay, can you see it? Everybody
In a
see
second, I think it's still loading. Right now I see a black screen. There you go.
Okay. So the first comic I have is Hellboy. I couldn't find any of the actual pages, so I found a lot of the art and like the cover art.
Okay.
This was the one that I was talking about on the first day of class. I have a book of it, but I don't know where it is. But this is him. It's my favorite comic book ever, my favorite movie. There's so much detail. Oops, here, let's see. Here's another one. That one's kind of small, sorry. But I like this one because
I
of
still only
the
see the Hellboy photo.
oh, that's so weird.
I see
Give it a second.
I see the Hellboy, and then I see your row of images at the bottom.
Okay, just give it a second. Right. Tell me when you see it though, because I can't
Which one are
tell what
you clicking
see.
on?
It should be like a smaller picture of him holding a sword.
Okay, so try double clicking on it.
I can see it. Like
Oh,
it's up
okay.
on my screen.
Okay, so you might try to stop sharing and then hit share again.
Okay. Let's try
And then
that
hit share.
again. Okay.
And make sure you're sharing your screen and not actually like an individual panel. You can see there's a lot of options.
Yeah, I'm sharing the screen.
Okay.
Can you see it now?
Not yet. It's still black.
Dang, my Wi-Fi is kind of slow. This computer is very slow.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Well, now we know. And that's part of what we're doing this today for, is to get a feel for our limitations. Because, yeah, now I don't see anything unless someone else
Strange.
does.
Weird. Here, let me try this again. We'll stop sharing and we'll click a different one. Let's see. Maybe this will work. Can you see it now?
Not yet.
Dang.
Dang. We had it the first time.
Dang. That stinks.
So, hold on just a second. Let me do this. While you're doing that, I will, let's see. Come on. Just take a click on it. All right. So, what I can do for you is I can share some Hellboy art that I've got up here on the screen.
Okay.
And we can look at some of that. So,
Yeah. Sure.
all right. So, where's my share screen? Here it is.
It's weird. It's not working.
I know. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right. Let me move this out of the way. So, Hellboy, made by Mike Mignola. You guys probably have all seen the movies, but his style is very graphic design. It's very unique, and it works a lot in black and whites. Some people compare it to Frank Miller in that there's a lot of use of solid blacks and solid whites, and very little like hatching or like cross hatching or all the detail like we saw in Bernie Wrightson or stuff like that. Instead, it's just chunks of blacks and then solid whites. And then usually the other thing that's really notable about his work is that the coloring is almost always in solids as well. So it gives it this nice, clean feel, but he does it all in a very stylized way that's just really, really very beautiful. And a lot of people have liked his work. I actually have a really rare Dracula comic book that was done by Mike Mignola. Bram Stoker's Dracula, done by Mike Mignola, which is pretty cool. So again, not only did Mike Mignola create or do all the art here, but he also created the world and the universe. And so he is, created something that he's going to continue to, and get back from for a long time to come. Here's a couple more examples of that. Don't know how to make just this as like a big slideshow, because I know how to slideshow like this, but I'd love to be able to figure out a way for Google to like make this full screen or something. Anybody know that trick? No, I didn't think so. I know most of them, but here I'll blow this one up though. You can see a close up of it. So yeah, he's using a lot of graphic design approach and elements, and so we'll talk about why that works so well. It's a great approach. All right, that's a good comic to choose. Good job. Sorry it didn't work. Maybe
That's okay. The second one that I chose was Bravest Warriors. We don't have to look at it, but it has like, if you haven't seen it, it's like an Adventure Time theme kind of like style.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Cool. Well, I like that. Some very different styles from each other you got going on there. All right. Well, thanks for trying. I assume it's probably just that internet connection. Sorry, it didn't work.
Yeah, that's okay.
All right. So let's move over to Seville. Seville, how are you sharing with us today?
Hello. I'm just gonna do the back of my camera because I don't have it on a digital format.
All right. Well, let me set you to spotlight then.
Gotcha.
Okay.
All right. So the first one I got is it's Angels of Death, and I've watched the anime of it, so I wanted to compare it to the actual manga.
Mhm.
And I haven't read any of this yet, so this is like first look for me too. I mean, I looked at it when I was in the store, obviously, but I was just thinking about it, and it's pretty much like a gory anime, which is kind of like what I'm inspired by because I want to learn how to draw all this stuff. And it's pretty much about this girl named Rachel who went to counseling for murder, and she kind of like forgot about her whole life about it, and then she has to go on floors to like go through her memories, kind of.
Mhm.
And it's just like a lot of it's a lot of violence, I guess.
Yeah. Cool.
But I really enjoy like the style of this. Like it's all dark and the shadowing on the blood and like on the carpet and everything. Like it's just very, I don't know. I think it's a pretty good style.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that that's another great example, another great black and white. Again, utilizing high contrast in the areas that they want you to look. For instance, blood is always fully shaded in as just black.
Yeah. Oops, sorry.
so that it's really easy to see and understand. So a lot of that has to do with choosing where you want your lights and where you want your darks.
Yeah, I just enjoy how they like play with the shading for sure.
Yeah. One thing I don't see a lot of in that book is backgrounds.
Yeah, I agree. There really isn't. There was a double-sided page here that I wanted to show.
Okay.
Oh, here it is. Just so we like know what it is. Like I thought this was pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool. I like the giant gun coming in.
I know.
Yeah, it is cool. And again, I think that going back to manga being made at such a high rate of speed, that's another thing that's common is to see not a lot of background work. I go a little bit crazy with my background sometimes.
Yeah.
And so, it really comes down to, in the end, do you want to get a lot of story told quickly, or do you want to do it in a very detailed way that's all about the art, or somewhere in the middle? That's a good example. Do you have another one?
The other one I got is just a Marvel comic, number 1000. I just wanted to get something original just for like understanding like the original art style, And I really enjoy the details in it, obviously, as well.
Right.
And it's just basic paneling, it's nothing like a manga paneling style.
That book looks like it's got a lot of samples of a lot of different art in it.
Definitely.
So that's a great book to have.
Yeah.
Because you're seeing so many different artists in the industry. And different ways of approaching things. Like that's a crazy layout page right there with the Galactus. Because like when you look at you guys see this, if you can hold on the camera for a second, you got your top 3 panels, and then you have the one where the thing is like in a gown of some kind, and then you have Galactus in the second panel there in a gown, and then you have the third one where he's pointing down. So that brings us down to that big panel instead of going to the right, where we see Galactus and Black Bolt. So that's an interesting way of like trying to get people to look at the panel you want to go to, because you could very easily just continue to the right and go all the way over. So is it is it a good layout? Maybe, maybe not, but it's definitely different. Very cool. Yeah, that's a great. I might have to see if I can get my hands on that, because I love how you get so many different styles in that one.
Yeah, I just got it at Barnes and Noble, actually.
Nice. Well, that's a great one to have.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like this one right here is kind of different than everything else there too. It's just kind of like I'm not even sure what to call this. Just like a weekly calendar. I don't know.
Yeah. And take a look at something else here, guys. This is an example of, again, what not to do, and finding things in professional comics that are not necessarily the best way to do things. So it's pretty clear that the order that they want you to read this in, because it says Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, right? But when you go to the Monday panel, you see the wings of this bat overlapping from the panel below it, and it kind of tries to pull your eye down into that Wednesday panel. Same thing when you're looking at Thursday's panel, you immediately see him on his motorcycle bursting into that panel, which draws your eye down to it first before you ever even have a chance to go look at the Friday panel. So that's, not the greatest approach. When you break panels like that, you really want to do it with purpose and not just whenever it feels good. So that's one of the great things I love about having so many different samples like you have, is that you can see good stuff and see lots of different styles, and you can also start to find things that don't work so well.
Yeah.
That's another crazy panel layout.
I know.
That one looks
Full-
hard to decipher which way to read.
Yeah, it just kind of puts your center of attention in the middle.
Yeah.
And not really sure where to bubble out.
Yeah. So again, there's artistic liberties when you make a comic, but the ultimate goal is always story first. What's happening on this page? What's the story? I think I have that comic, that Star Wars comic.
Yeah.
So cool. I love that book. That's pretty awesome. I'm gonna have to look for that. Marvel Comics issue 1000 or something, right?
Yeah, here, I got you.
Nice. I'm gonna definitely have to check that out.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing. Let's see who else we got. We got Max and Brina, if I'm not mistaken. So let's check with Max. You there? All right. She's gonna do her screen share. Bless you. Okay, so do you have any audio? Can you tell us why you chose this, or I can use the chat. All right, so she's using the chat. Superman DC, no. I think that you were talking about the mic, but no pig screaming. No, a pig. Are you trying to say there's a pig screaming and that's why you can't use your mic? I think that's what she's saying. So, yes, it's not working right. I really want to know more about that story at some point, why there's a pig screaming, but on to the comic books. So this is a great example of older style newsprint comics that were made in like anywhere from the 40s to the 70s. And it's the same kind of print you get a newspaper on. And so everything that's colored is generally colored pretty simply, just because it was harder to do color at that time. But there's also a lot of really great artists that came out from these eras. All right, do you have another page to show? I'm commentating for Max. All right. Anybody know what comic this is from or what manga? Sir Vamp. All right. And why did you choose this one or the DC one? Either one. Like, see what we can get. I love the style. Cool. All right. Is there something particular about the style that you like? And the DC was given to her. Okay. Go ahead. So what is that? Is there something in particular? Looks like origami. Dullness and dramatic style. Okay. There is a lot of drama and dramatic action happening in here. But again, I think that one of the things we're going to talk about with our characters and our comics is having designs of your characters that are easily recognizable and different. So in the left panel, you can see you got a character with blonde hair and another character that has solid black hair with glasses, so that even if you don't draw them exactly the same, we still know who's who, and it's very, very helpful. Then, of course, there's all kinds of speed lines. If it's manga, there must be speed lines somewhere. All right, cool. Well, thank you for sharing. And I hope you get the pig situation sorted. I kind of want to know more about that. All right. Lastly, Brina.
So I am not as well versed in the world of comics
That's
like you
okay.
guys are. But let me share my screen for a sec. Here we go. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
All right. So this is a graphic novel I actually read in middle school, and I got to meet the author of, so that was kind of cool. And it's kind of got a simplistic, I guess, kind of cartoony style, but it's very to the point. It shows what it needs to.
Yeah.
And you get the gist of it.
Yeah.
So it's a pretty cool story too.
I like it. Is that the same story right there?
Mm-hmm. It's
okay.
Kind of an amalgamation of a few different stories about this kid who comes to America, and he also kind of relays a bunch of childhood stories that he's heard.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually haven't read this comic. I would like to. I have seen the TV show of it, and I'm sure some of you have too. It's pretty gory.
Yeah.
But it's just a complete shift from the American-born Chinese graphic novel.
Yeah.
So the difference in styles, just the range that comics can have, it's very interesting to me. And I want to read this comic one day, so hopefully I can get my hands on some copies.
Yep. Yeah. The Boys is another typical American comic style for the most part, but it's got an interesting way of doing like the shading and stuff like that. But one of the things I liked about the first example that you showed was that you can in these American comics, there's a lot of body language and action poses. And if you're an illustrator or you're trying to make a comic that way, then you really got to know anatomy and proportion and foreshadowing and all kinds of stuff. Whereas in this particular style, you can still tell a story. I liked this example because it shows that you can tell a story even if your drawing is still pretty much like straight on characters. We're not seeing these great big dynamic poses or anything like that, and it can still be an interesting story. So yeah, I'm glad you shared those two totally different styles. All right, so thank you very much. And let's see, you gotta get out of screen sharing for us. There we go. Very good, very good. Okay, so the last thing that we want to do before we go, and we're running out of time, is really fast. I want, if you can, or if you're comfortable to, share your current art style, particularly with a character. If you have a character to share. So Kirk, do you have an example? Of all of you get your samples ready on your screen so that if you're going to screen share it, you can just hit the button and share it real fast because we've only got about 8 minutes left. Kirk, do you have a sample? Camera ran out of batteries. Oh, that would be why you're stuck there. And I made a drawing. Okay. Can you screen share it or no?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Yeah, I just made something. So
Very good. Very
I
good.
don't really have any old things.
Nice. I like it. Looks like you have nice proportions there. Did you use reference for that?
Yep.
Good.
So her leg is actually very similar to, as crazy as that leg looks.
Very good. Very good. So that's a great way to begin, comics, is to look at images and try to replicate them. The first step that you're doing right now is to find the lines, the contour lines that make it up. But the next stage is to go in and start choosing how to give it contrast. So great job. That's very nice. And Sabrina says it's very pretty. So good job.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you for sharing. Let's go on to the next one. Who's next? And if you don't have one, you can just pass because we're running out of time. Let me go back to the front here. Kate, do you have one?
Yeah, I have a couple because I
Okay.
couldn't decide. So just really quickly, this is Salvador Dali. I did this
Nice.
in Seth Lockard's class the first time I had him when I was like 16. And then this is one of my most recent pieces.
Very nice.
It's a fire elemental. She has the symbol for fire on her forehead, and she's a princess.
Nice. I love all the texture and the highlights and shadows. Great job.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing. I look forward to seeing some of those textures and shadows in your comic. All right, moving on to Seville.
All right.
What's up?
So I drew on paper because I usually draw digitally, but I misunderstood. And for some reason, I thought we had to like draw on paper. I don't know why, but I was just messing around and just like drawing different art styles. I don't really have like a character I've developed yet. Oh shit, it's gonna be hard. It's kind of detailed.
I remember
I like.
this. Yeah.
Is it pretty like blurry?
No.
All right. I'm more into like creatures and designing like weird creatures, like this one up here. Got a hand tail, all that double-headed thing. And I wanted to practice with like armor and stuff because I've never drawn it before. And I was practicing mouse. Yeah. And just
I
kind
like how everything's just
like,
sort of mixing in and melding into the next thing, and like this big, it's like one big
just
piece
kind of
together.
like I was just doing like a random character sheet, just kind of like to show what I can draw, kind of. I didn't really know what to draw, just a random sketch page.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for sharing. That was really nice. I like it.
Yeah, no problem.
Brina, do you have anything to share?
Yeah, let me share my screen just really quick.
Okay.
So this is one of my more recent pieces, and I didn't have a plan going into this, but I actually really like the end result.
Yeah, I do too. It's beautiful. I love the colors. It's got almost like a little bit of a sticker 3D effect with the drop shadow that you have around the characters. It looks like they're sitting above the background a little bit, almost like a cardboard cutout. Was that intentional?
Yeah, I wanted them to stand out from the background a little bit.
Cool. I like it. It's very, very beautiful. I love your color choices. The violets and cyans really go nicely together. Very well done. Good job. I look forward to seeing more of that. Let's see who else we got here. Bailey.
So, this is a bit old, but it's more kind of like a background thing. But if you want to see something more recent, I did this for a friend to help him with his D&D book that he's creating.
Nice textures, shadow, proportions, looking good. Very good. How long did that take?
Not long.
Good.
I mostly had just I've never really drawn a fish person. So I kind of had to look up a lot of references.
That's okay.
I have multiple designs of like different types because I don't really know what he's looking for.
Well, that falls into the arena of concept art. So good job. Kind of coming up with some different designs. Those are nice. Good job. I like those a lot. Let's see. Grace, what do you got for us today?
I will share my screen.
All right.
Sorry, I'm trying to be fast. This is one part of a 3-part series I'm making called Rainy Day.
Okay.
Oh, that's Sephiroth. That's a fan art. And this is the second part. They're both not done.
Okay.
I hate making backgrounds. But and then this is fan art, but I wanted to show it because it's my best shading in my opinion.
Okay. I like that. I like you got some good proportions, and you're starting to drop in some color. And I think that, you know, you've got a great start to making comics. You've got the proportions down. So all of you guys, we're off to a great start already. Who else is here that can share some stuff? We got Kristen, Max, Keegan. You guys have stuff?
Yeah, I got stuff.
All right, Keegan, let's see what you got.
All right. I just draw on liquor bags at work. So yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Just stuff. I think that's Guts from Berserk. My buddy was just like, "Hey, draw this."
Yeah.
Horseface Dandy. This is Mugen from Champloo. Here's Spider-Man. Just like, I got an issue drawing my own stuff, but I can kind of photocopy other shit sometimes. So I don't know. I'm trying to learn how to draw.
That's how we all start, man.
I figured as much. But yeah.
Yeah, it's totally cool. I love it. I'd be so stoked to go into the store and like have my bag have artwork on it like that.
There's like they like play board games and like card games and stuff like Magic right next door. So I just started by drawing the nerds bags, pretty much is what I called it. And I'm also one, so like I would go over there and show with them. But yeah, that's how that started.
Cool. Well, yeah, I've actually drawn on quite a few napkins and tablecloths, like the paper tablecloths and stuff at restaurants. It's fun to draw on that kind of stuff sometimes.
Yeah, it is.
Well, cool, man. That's cool. I'm glad you shared that. Those are awesome. All right, let's see. Kristen, you got something for us?
Yeah, I got a few things.
All right.
So this is like pencil. Thought I'd start there.
Nice. That's beautiful.
All right, now I gotta figure out how to switch.
Maybe just the left arrow button.
Okay, that was one of my first digital characters I made.
It's still got nice proportions. I mean, there's a few little things, but for the most part, it's really nice. Like as far as the proportions. Did you reference a pose or something?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. That's great.
And then this is one I'm working on currently.
Nice.
I gotta fix his leg, but
that's something I'm glad you're showing this, is that this looks great too. I love the energy in this, but like when you're looking at something for reference, it's one thing to get the pose, and usually that's one of the first things that we'll start to get as an artist, is how to get the proportions right. But then the next level is understanding actual anatomy and how muscles work, and where to put all those little interior lines so that they make sense and are in the right place. And that is something that you're starting to show in this illustration. So great job with that.
yeah. And then to show like space, this is kind of like a concept art I'm working on currently for a place in my D&D campaign.
Nice.
I like just started working on the detail on the dragon itself, like right here.
Yeah. I like your, start off messy and then go back in and detail in later approach. That's a good approach. Very good. All right, guys. Is that everybody? Did we get everybody?
No, you missed me.
Who said that? Akila. Okay, let's take a look at Akila's real fast
All
before
right.
we go. We're running over time, but I'm okay with that. We're getting some cool stuff here.
I can't share screen while someone else is sharing.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
trying to
Kristen,
figure out
stop
how
sharing.
to undo this.
Go to the top, hover to the top. There you go. You got it.
Uh-huh.
All right, and so
Good practice for you guys. All right, show us what you got, girl.
this is a poster I'm working on at the moment. It's not finished. I need to add more
Nice.
foliage and finish the stairs.
I really like that color scheme too.
Oh yeah, it's all just orange and blue, so complementary.
Yeah.
I definitely work a lot more with vectors, so that's way more my style, is like flat colors, vectors.
Okay. Cool.
And so there's that, and then just a die cut that I had to do for a final.
Oh, yes, that's a fun project.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so the challenge is going to be for all of you guys. Those are great examples from everyone. So the challenge is going to be for a lot of you guys, you'll look at a character or you'll look at a reference to draw your drawings, and that's absolutely normal. But the challenge is going to come when you have to then draw that same character again in the next panel in a different pose and make sure it still looks like the same character. And that's where we're going to practice actually drawing formulaic bodies and like mathematical proportions so that you can start to learn to move and position your characters instead of always having to rely on reference. But don't ever think you have to not use reference, because I still to this day use reference for lots of things, especially if it's something that I haven't drawn that often or that I just want to make sure and get right, like particular background. And Grace said I use take photos of myself for reference. There's a lot of that in Mythica, I can tell you that. I've used myself, I've used family members. There's a whole scene where I referenced my dad for every character on the page, even though there was like 4 different characters. So it's pretty common to use reference. The trick is changing it from what you're looking at and making it your own, so that it's not obvious that you're just copying it. We're going to get more into the difference between copying and referencing in a future class. All right, that's it for today. It's been a fast 2 hours. We've covered a lot of stuff, and I've tried to keep things exciting. Don't forget that your first prompt drawing is due by next class at the beginning of class, and that prompt word, wait, make sure I'm not mixing up my classes. We did talk about a prompt word in this class, right? Help me out.
I don't remember.
I'm looking at the assignments folder.
I think that was the concept art class.
It was. I took that out of this class, and so I apologize. I just confused the hell out of you guys. I had it in there last semester, and I took it out because I felt like it was getting to be too much with trying to make the comic and the story as well. So, never mind what I was saying. Great job today, guys. Great job, everybody, for participating and really being part of the discussion. That's what we're always looking for. Your homework is really simple. By next class, you want to make sure and read chapter 2 of Understanding Comics, where they're going to get into a little bit more about the different parts of a comic book page and the vocabulary. And we are going to do an in-class little game exercise and then turn in our first actual assignment, which is just to turn in a comic terms upload based on what we did in class. So, and then I'll send you home on the weekend with a research report on your favorite a comic book page and what you can break down. So that's what we'll be doing next class. So all you got to do is look at some, read another chapter, and you're done. Pretty easy day. So, unless anybody has any questions, that's it for this session.
I have an easy question. I remember you were talking about an anatomy book, and I was looking for it. Did you put it up there, or?
Let me see. That's a great question. Helpful how to draw tutorials. Yes, so if you go to the content section, actually, I'll share my screen real fast to make it faster. Let me move this out of the way.
For the comic terms, is that do we just choose them ourselves from chapter 2, or is that from what we covered today?
Neither. In class, next class, we're going to do a little game of comics, and basically I'm going to, have a slideshow, and I'm going to be like, what is this? And you're going to fill in the answer, and by the time we're done, we'll have the comic terms form filled out. There's going to be a blank, and then all you have to do is turn it in. Now, I saw that you already turned one in, so that's fine
So,
too.
I turned in ones from chapter 1. Did you see my email? I have to do an ASI at work on Wednesday, and my boss, he gave me the option to be at work or at home, and I'm not sure yet what I'm going to do because I feel like staying home is going to make me look bad. So I don't, and I can't bring my phone into the building.
Okay. Yeah, I
So
saw your email.
Okay, I don't know if I'm going to be there next class. I'm going to try to be, but I'm not
Right.
sure if I will be.
So, yeah, I mean, you'll be able to watch the video and go back and watch it, but essentially it's just going to be going over the terminology. And then I will send you with the homework of doing a report, but I'll be going over in class how that report should be done. It has to do with the terms. And so you'll have the whole weekend to work on it. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. So if you guys can see my screen in the content section, for those of you that are wanting to get better at drawing, go to right below week 3. You'll see a section called Helpful How to Draw Tutorials. I'm always adding to this section. So, I'll try to remind you when I add something new. But there's a bunch of little things here. A lot of these are single page type of things. Like this one is a little page on hands. We got another one here on human perspective, so on and so forth. But if you go to the list right here, Andrew Loomis, Successful Drawing. This is a 211-page book, and the entire thing is there. Andrew Loomis is one of the most renowned authors of a how to draw book out there.
I was gonna say, man, that's like a $30 something book right there. I just straight up when I saw that, I just clicked download immediately. Like,
Exactly.
yeah, I cannot believe you had that on here.
Gift to you guys. So you can see here it's still trying to download just the preview because there's 211 pages. But if you want to get better at art, this is a great book. It's got everything from how to draw people, how to draw them in perspective. You're welcome, Kirk. So yeah, definitely take advantage of that. Hit the download button, and in exchange, I'm waiting for it to actually show something, but it hasn't yet. There we go. So yeah, some of this gets pretty complex into perspective. And so if it's over your head, just start at the beginning and go with what you know, and then keep working your way down. Because at the beginning, it talks more about the basics and the fundamentals of shading and things like that. So another thing too is that if you guys have a tutorial that you feel is really useful and might be share worthy, then feel free to email it to me, and I'll take a look and decide. And if it works out, we'll add it to the list, because I'm always trying to grow this as a resource for everybody. So I think that's definitely all I have for today. That was a good question. Anybody else have a question before we go? No? All right. Well, that's it for today then. I will see you on Wednesday. All right.
Awesome.
See you
Thank
later.
you.
You're welcome,
Bye.
Keegan. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for participating today. And we'll see you on Wednesday.